Hi everyone, Eric Weiss here. Happy New Year. It's been a minute. I've been very busy over the holidays with family stuff, and I had a really great holiday, and I hope you all had a great holiday too. But I've also been really busy with my business. I've gained a lot of new clients recently, which means it's been a little difficult for me to create content and to share my experience with you guys. But a lot of new problems and challenges as well that I've been dealing with. So a lot of new things to share with you. I've got a content list a mile long. So I'm excited to help you guys out in the near future. So before I get started, one thing I wanted to say that, last year I wrote this book called Build the Right Things: How to Design and Build a Product People Will Love. And I wrote it because I've just met with dozens and dozens of founders who have struggled with some really common pitfalls and failure patterns, how to get their new product built quickly and efficiently, how to gain traction and find product market fit, and how to build an engineering organization that scales and grows with the company. So I wrote this book, and it was great, and everyone loved it, and I started giving it away at every opportunity. I just wanted to share the message, and I wanted people to have it and read it, and got a ton of great feedback. And so basically I decided to just give it away for free to everybody. So it's no longer costs money unless you want the print version, which is available on Amazon. But if you want to get the book for free, just go to fullcycleproduct.com, and just below the fold, you'll see a little sign up area. And if you give me your email address, then you'll get both the ebook and the audiobook format sent to you for free. I put a ton of work into this. This took almost half a year for me to write. Not only write it, but then doing all the graphics, the templates, the editing, the recording and editing of the audiobook. It was a huge labor of love, but I am excited to give it away to you for free because I think there's just a ton of value for there. And if you're here, if you're watching my video, you're engaging with me, you're exactly the person who needs this book. So go for it. Go get it. Okay, so first video of the year. What do I want to talk about? I have so many ideas. It's hard. It was really hard to pick just one, but I'm going to pick one that I've run into, again, a number of times with some of my new clients, but it's something that's happening almost universally to some degree with every business I've ever consulted with. How to find and keep a great co-founder. Okay, so there's two kind of general problems here that arise. One is there's a lot of founders who think that they can just do this on their own. And while some can, it's a burden and it's a hindrance, right? So there's a reason why so many of the great companies that have co-founding teams, whether it's a pair or perhaps three people, co-founders, and it makes for a more robust and risk adverse or risk resilient team as the company grows. So how do you find a great co-founder? It's like a marriage, right? It's not just something that you want to jump into. There's a huge amount of trust and responsibility and chemistry that goes along with it. So how do you find someone that's a good fit for you? Then you found this co-founding team, you're building your company, you're scaling, you're growing, and things start to fall apart. Conflict arises. You're obviously under a huge amount of stress. It's an incredibly stress-inducing and anxious thing to build a company, and a lot of co-founders find that their relationships get strained. If they started off as friends, it doesn't mean they're great business partners, right? Or as the pot grows bigger, right? As the reward grows bigger, you find people start to show their true colors and perhaps start to try to do something shady towards one another, or they simply don't know how to deal with conflict, right? And so they, equal vote, equal share. There's a lot of roadblocks that happen, and what ends up is you get politicking and undermining and things like that. And ultimately, that can cause a rift. It can cause a split in the company. And if one of the co-founders leaves, it's incredibly damaging to the company in terms of the operations, but also in terms of the valuation and the ability to acquire new capital and new talent and so on. So those are the two big things that I want to focus on today: how to find a great co-founder, how to deal with that and deal with the co-founder, and how to manage some of that conflict as you grow. Okay, so jump right in. How do you find a good co-founder? Well, the short answer is, and not the one you probably want to hear, but it's best if it's someone you already know. It's best if you already have a best friend or a business partner or someone that you've worked very closely with for many years, and there's just this natural pairing. In fact, the idea came up together because you guys you're in the same industry, or you see the same problem, you spent a lot of time together, you've spoken about it, and it just seems like a natural fit. Obviously, that's the easiest thing. That doesn't always happen. Okay, so let's say you don't have someone like that. That's a natural sort of Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak kind of pairing. What do you do? Well, obviously you have to think about who's in your network now. Who do you already know? Because there's a huge trust building exercise that needs to happen here. So the farther along you are along building trust, the easier it's going to be. Because again, it is like a marriage. You kind of have to get to know each other. You have to be friends. You have to sort of date first before you jump into that significant commitment. So the main thing you want to think about are, what are the skills that you have, that you bring to the table, and what are the skills that you don't have that you need somebody else to compensate for. Okay, so if you are really great at sales, if you're a really strong visionary, but you're not really technical, you need a technical co-founder, you need a CTO, right? Or vice versa. Depending on the market, right? Like maybe you are really great at building technology companies and startups, and you've done it before, but you see an opportunity in a space where you don't have a lot of domain expertise. So you might bring someone from industry who really understands the business, better than you do. So that's a great pairing there. A lot of times too, it's that, maybe you are more junior, you have a lot of experience maybe, but not as a co-founder. And so maybe finding somebody who's just more experienced than you. And then they're looking at you as somebody who's got a ton of energy, who's willing to put a ton into the business. Or, you have, again, a specific skill set that you bring to the table, but they're the one with the most experience. They're likely to be, the CEO. So those are the kind of things to think about. So, maybe one exercise you can do is sort of write down what are all the skills that you believe is needed in the co-founding team, which is, again, a combination of a few things: sales, understanding of the market, understanding of the customer, understanding of technology and what it's going to take to build it, right? And any other sort of domain expertise or connections that are necessary in order to build this product, okay? And the last thing I'd say would be the ability to raise money, so connections in the fundraising community. So those things would be, what I would sort of lay out, and then figure out what boxes you check really well. And then whichever boxes aren't checked, then you need to think about who in your network has those that can check those boxes. A lot of times it's two people, or it's one person that you need to find. It's a pair, but in some cases you might need three people. So there might be a really great sort of sales visionary, fundraising CEO. You have a really strong technical CTO, but then you need somebody with some domain experience, right? Who might be, either a COO, a CMO, or even a chief product officer. So that's it. So thinking, you create this set of targets, right? You think about, who do I know in my network that can backfill, and compensate for what is needed, what I can't bring to the table. Then you have to think about chemistry, right? So how well do you work with this person, or how much trust is being built? Again, ideally, it's somebody that you already know, but let's say you don't. Okay, so there's, you might know them as an acquaintance, but how do you build that trust with them? Certainly you want to start spending time with them. you want to kind of float this opportunity. Say you see this, you have this idea, and you see them as a potential candidate, and be sort of forthcoming with them that, hey, you are really sort of evaluating people. You've got a short list, and there's someone that really caught your eye. And then talk through, what your values are. Okay, so maybe the first thing for you to do is to even write down your values, okay? So that you can share with the other person to say, these are my values. What are your values? Okay, thinking about your work ethic. Think about the time commitment that's available, right? Are you available to jump into this full time, or is this going to be a side thing for you, right? So making sure not necessarily that there's a balance, although balance is great, but at least that you both know what the expectations are. You know what you're getting yourselves into, okay? So you set the expectations around the commitment, you set the expectations around the values, you try to understand, is there a good compatibility here between your, the skills you bring to the table, work ethic, passion, commitment, and so on. And then you try to see, well, okay, let's test this out, right? How can we sort of have a proof of concept, if you will, or a trial run of the relationship? And so maybe what you can do is you can do some of the preliminary research together, right? Carve off a chunk of work that they can do. And at this point, it's probably for free. You don't have a company yet. There's no shares. And so, it's really just the ability for someone to put some elbow grease into this and see where it goes. So it could be doing some preliminary market research. It could be looking at some competitors. It could be looking at potential technology that's needed to build this thing, what have you. But just start to get in that flow and sort of paint the picture of this is how we might work together. Okay. And then at that point, you're kind of off and running, okay? And as things go, you'll decide whether or not to make a really deep commitment into it, or, hey, you know what? Maybe we're going to stick to this thing full time until we really know that this thing has legs. And then obviously, that's the time to say, let's incorporate, hire a lawyer, get your shares worked out. And that's a topic for another, video is how to split equity. But let's say you come up with a fair equity balance, and off you go. Okay. So now let's talk about how do you maintain that co-founder relationship as the business scales and grows. So one of the key things that comes up is when co-founders sort of undermine each other in front of the rest of the company. So they have a misalignment in vision, a misalignment in goals, simply a misalignment in priorities, and it comes out in public. It comes out in front of other members of the team. This is really, really damaging. Okay, so the first thing I would suggest is that you get alignment. Okay, that you have your leadership team, sort of strategic planning, strategic alignment, that you hash this out very early on, but then as you scale and grow, it's something that you continue to revisit is what do we value? What are our strategic goals? What do we want out of this company, or how do we want to prioritize things? You have to be in lockstep. Okay, the co-founding team, the C-suite has to be a united front against the world, and certainly a united front when presented towards, the rest of the company. Okay, so first make sure you have alignment. Then, if there is something that's out of alignment, right, you need to hash those things out in private, right? So don't drag kind of your dirty laundry in front of the whole team. If there is a conflict and it comes up, right? But if there's a disagreement, okay, and something that you're not able to resolve really quickly, or things start to get heated, one of you has to put the brakes on it and say, you know what? We need to go talk about this offline, or let's go talk about this in private. Let's huddle, get our heads together around this, and then we'll come back with an answer. We don't have to solve this problem right here. Okay. And that does two things. One, obviously it just sort of de-escalates the situation. But two, it also shows the rest of the team, again, that you guys are united, you're partners, and you go off and you deal with your problems together. And then when you come back to the team, okay, cool, we got this, right? There's always going to be some tension. There may always be debate. When the debate's healthy, that's fine. But everything should always drive towards, a higher level strategic alignment. Okay, so dealing with that conflict in the moment is really critical. Then the other thing is just around kind of the long term exit strategy or the long term plan. This is something that you need to revisit, I would say quarterly, but certainly on an annual basis. Is like, where do we see this company going in 3 to 5 years? So one of the biggest problems that I found in co-founding pairs is when they have a different vision of the scale of the company. One maybe wants a lifestyle business or is comfortable with maybe a smaller acquisition, and the other one wants to go big. They want to be a unicorn. Those are two fundamentally different business models, two fundamentally different ways of approaching almost every kind of problem, whether it's, how do you build and scale technology to grow versus sort of getting it just, good enough so that we can move on and add more features and gain more market share just to sell. How you want to incentivize people, do you want to keep all the equity because it's going to grow really big, or do you want kind of, the more people on the team to have a stake because it gets you, really engaged kind of long-term team players, people that are going to be with the company for, 10 years or so because it's this long-term lifestyle business. You want them to have a stake in the company. You want them to have ownership. So it's very important for you guys to always understand, what's the type of company you want to build, what's the identity or the DNA of the company, and that, you're revisiting that because it can change as well, right? As the market shifts, as new information arises, new opportunities arise, you may find yourself challenging, your old beliefs about how big the company could be or how hard you want to push. Life can always get in the way. You might have kids. You might have some health challenges in the family, or simply just a change of heart. That you might have had a lot of appetite early on, and now you kind of need to slow things down a bit, and that's okay. But it's important that that you're in alignment on it, that you're in agreement, and then you have to figure out what you're going to do about that. Okay, so in a lot of cases, when one co-founder wants something to be really big and the other one doesn't, then there's an opportunity for a buyout, right? So it could be that the person who is not as eager may just step out of the day-to-day operations. They might keep their equity stake, but they give up any salary and they step out. They go get a job. They go do something else. There's value in the equity, and they own it. Whatever shares they own outright. But then that would be a good opportunity if you have the money to buy out that early the early co-founder or shareholder, because there's going to be a huge amount of growth in your mind if you're the one that wants to grow the thing big, that's sitting on the table, right? They have this big equity stake, whatever it is, 25% of the company. You're going to take this thing and you're going to grow it really big. Now's the time for you to buy up any equity for people that aren't engaged anymore, even paying off your early investors because you want to, own that stake because you're going to take this thing and grow it. That's, one example, but something that comes around very often. And the last thing I'll say that I'll recommend is there are actually therapists that specialize in co-founder relationships. I'm not going to refer anybody, to the public, but if you're interested in something like this, please feel free to reach out to me. But there are coaches. I do some of this myself, although I'm not a licensed counselor, but it's something that I do a lot in my business. But if things get too bad or too far, sort of beyond my my abilities, I have some therapists again that focus on business relationships and co-founder relationships that can help, almost like a marriage counselor would, kind of help deal with conflict, that can help kind of bring stuff to the surface and help you just sort of hash things out and ideally come to a good resolution and ongoing, right, on to grow big. So that's it. That's what I really wanted to cover today. It's something that I'm dealing with a lot right now, and so it's very, very close to me. But I hope that you gain some value from this. Again, if there's anything, any questions you have or anything you need, please feel free to email me, eric@fullcycleproduct.com. You can go to my website, contact me through there as well, or just leave a comment on the video. And please go ahead and go download my book. Again, it's free. put a ton of work into it. I really believe in it. I stand by the information. I stand by the tools and the experience that's in there. And listen to the audiobook. It's just a few hours long, a few commutes or a few runs, and you're through it. And I think you'll gain a lot. Although the ebook does have a lot more. There's a lot of visuals in it. There's a lot of templates and graphics and so on. So honestly, I think the ebook is probably the better experience, which I think you can get through in a 2 or 3 sittings. So again, go grab it, and I wish you best of luck. So have a wonderful day and happy 2020.